For all beginning woodworkers, I only recommend a single sander, the Random Orbit Sander. It's so useful that I consider it an essential woodworking tool. But there are some other fairly affordable sanders that can make your time in the shop even more enjoyable and efficient. If you're just starting to build your workshop, hold off on these and get your essential tools first. And to help you out, I've assembled a handy guide of affordable tools at mytoollist.com. Download it for free to learn how you can get all the basic tools you need for under $1,000. This first sander is my favorite, and it's actually two sanders. It's got a 1-inch strip sander and a disc sander. You can buy these two separately, but they're commonly sold in a single unit like this one. I bought this tool close to 20 years ago because I wanted the disc sander. The 1-inch strip sander seemed nice, but I doubted I would really get much use out of it. And as it turned out, I keep finding more and more uses for it, and now I absolutely love using the strip sander. I probably use it just as often as I do the disc sander. I use it for sanding small pieces, and it's great for reaching into spaces impossible with other sanders, say widening thin slots. I use it for freehand shaping of pieces. It's probably the most artistic sander there is. You can actually sculpt with it. And it's great for sharpening tools, lawnmower blades, axes, as well as cleaning stuff off of tools. This unit has an 8-inch disc sander, something that doesn't seem to be very common anymore. Most of these hobby grade tools seem to come with a 5-inch sander now. But it should work out fine. That extra diameter probably doesn't add much when you're sanding curves. And that's the main use for a disc sander, to sand outside curves. No matter what kind of saw you use to cut curves, it'll be nearly impossible to get smooth edges. And the advantage to using this rather than a random orbit sander is that this has a table, so you can make sure you're sanding square to the face of the board. Plus, the table tilts so that you can sand bevels, and there's a miter gauge for sanding miters. A disc sander is especially handy when you need to sand something down to a precise line. About the only thing I don't like about this is that it uses adhesive-backed sanding discs, and changing them out is a real pain, and once you peel it off, you can't replace it. So as a result, I just buy 120 grit sandpaper and leave it on probably way past its useful life. I think you can buy some converters that you can glue on so that you can use Velcro fasteners, but I'm not really sure about that. A spindle sander works on inside curves. It comes with all different size diameters spindles, and the sandpaper comes in tubes that slide down onto them. The tool spins to sand, but it also has an up and down oscillating motion to prevent scratch mark patterns, just like your random orbit sander does. So to use it, you just find the diameter that most closely matches your curve, you drop the spindle in place and start sanding. Since it's only attached on one end, you can use it to sand or enlarge holes or get into other hard to sand spots. And having a flat table ensures that you're keeping your sanded edges square to the faces. A detail sander picks up where your random orbit sander leaves off. It can get into tight corners because of its pointy tip, but also because it's lightweight. It's also very handy for any areas where other sanders just might be difficult to wield. A random orbit sander is heavy, and its oscillating action makes it kind of hard to keep steady on areas where you might be working against gravity. A finishing sander is a lot less fatiguing to use. My handheld belt sander is probably the most aggressive sander in my shop and on this list. Its main purpose is for removing lots of material fast. It can take a little finesse to use it in such a way that doesn't ruin your workpiece. If you tip it just a little, it'll gouge into the wood. And if you hold it in one place too long, it'll dig right into the surface. So when you use a belt sander, you want to always keep it in motion. However, if you tip it upside down and clamp it to your workbench, you'll get much better control since you control the workpiece instead of the tool. In fact, you might consider a stationary belt sander. These typically have 4-inch wide belts and are mounted horizontally. Some come with a disc sander, just like my strip sander, and that might be handy to actually have two disc sanders, or you could keep a coarse sandpaper on one and have the other with, say, medium grit. I've never owned a stationary belt sander, so I can't speak personally personally about them, but a lot of people love having them, and there's certainly been times when I wished I had one. Thanks for watching, everybody.